This is the Palin Update on SarahNet Radio. I'm Kevin Scholla.
So many American families have spilled blood and treasure to guarantee Phil Robertson and everybody else's right to voice their personal opinion.
They say the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Sarah Palin has proven that, acting with grace and honesty, just like her parents. Another prominent patriot who obviously learned a lot from his family is Texas Senator Ted Cruz. Today, Cruz's dad, Pastor Rafael Cruz, is here to talk about his son, our country, and much, much more. Sarah Palin speaks out in support of Phil Robertson of Duck Dynasty after he was attacked by the liberal media and booted off of his show for simply referencing the Bible. A Christmas call to action from Governor Palin, a brand new Commonwealth Common Sense with Susan Stimson on the way, and just ahead our latest edition of Steel Resolve with Sarah Steelman. Right now, our very special guest, he is the director of Purifying Fire Ministries, and he's the father of Senator Ted Cruz, Pastor Rafael Cruz. Pastor Cruz, welcome to the Palin Update on SarahNet Radio.
It is great to be with you, Kevin.
First, sir, I have to ask you, how proud are you of your son? He has done such incredible things in such a short amount of time. You must be so proud of Ted Cruz.
I certainly am. I tell you, it is. When I first saw him being sworn in January, I could not contain the tears from my eyes, and I thought back 55 years before when I came to this country. I didn't have any money, couldn't even speak the language. And to see my son being sworn in as U.S. Senator, all I could think was only in America. Only in America.
And here we are approaching another January, and it's only been a year, and it seems like he's done more and has, gotten more energy up from so many people than folks who've been there for decades.
Well, Kevin, the sad thing is that he should be the rule and not the exception. That is really sad that he is one of very few voices that are really shouting it from the housetops. Most people up there in Washington, unfortunately, are just going along to get along, become a member of the club, and they don't want to upset the status quo. But, the country is facing some very, very severe challenges, and I think the way that this administration is trampling on the Constitution and the separation of powers, and both Obama and Harry Reid are operating in a very tyrannical manner, which is totally contrary to the Constitution.
And we all have such admiration for your son, and we support him not just because he fights for us and the Constitution, and we agree with him politically, but we trust him. We believe what he says. Is that a family value, honesty? Well,
you have to go back to when he was even 8 years old. When he was 8 years old, our conversation around the dinner table all centered about politics. I had come from Cuba, had seen what socialism could do to a country. And then in the late 70s, I began seeing the socialist policies of Jimmy Carter. So I became very actively involved in an organization called the Religious Roundtable, which was a Judeo-Christian organization that worked in parallel with Moral Majority to help bring millions of conservatives to the polls to help elect Ronald Reagan. So while Ted was 8, 9 years old, our conversation centered on politics every day at the dinner table. So he got an earful for 2 years in a row. And then all during high school, he was involved with an organization called the Free Enterprise Institute. And think about this, Kevin. As he entered high school, he was reading Milton Friedman, he was reading von Mises, Adam Smith, Hayek, Frederick Bastiat, the Federalist Papers, the Anti-Federalist Papers. And this organization created a group of 5 kids. They called them the Constitutional Corroborators. These 5 kids, using a mnemonic device where they would memorize a string of letters and create the text from those letters, memorize the entire U.S. Constitution. And for the next 4 years, they gave approximately 80 speeches on free market economics and the Constitution throughout the state of Texas. So before Ted left high school, he was passionate about the Constitution. He was passionate about the Declaration. He was passionate about free markets and limited government and fighting for freedom. And this passion has become like a fire in his bones that has been there for over 30 years. That's why I know he's not going to compromise in Washington, because that fire is still as alive as it was 30 years ago.
It's really such a beautiful and powerful story. You see so many parents today, I mean, rarely even speaking to their kids, let alone about issues like that. Mine are only 3 and 5 right now, but when you hear that about, you say, Ted being 8, every Flag Day, every Constitution Day, we try to go out and do something, that represents America. Go to the Constitution Center, tell them about as much on their level as you can and what Memorial Day is about, these types of things. So that is wonderful to hear that's the path to Ted Cruz-ness. But let me ask you this. Elected officials often let people down, and now more so than ever. The corruption in Washington, all-time high. Then your son comes along, and people watch him closely, and they say, well, he seems to be doing it all right, and they're almost waiting for a misstep. But then I think of those who see you, sir, and they hear you speak. And then they quickly realize if Senator Cruz did go off course, he'd have to answer not only to us, but to you. And I think
that is for sure.
And I think that's made people wholly trust your son, because they know he doesn't want to mess with you.
But I'll tell you what, as I said, he has had a passion for the Constitution and for fighting for this country for over 30 years. And he speaks from the heart. And, people tell me all the time, how come he speaks and he doesn't use notes? Well, he doesn't use notes because he speaks from the heart. It's not a canned speech. He speaks from the heart.
Yeah, what an opposite, right, of a president now who, when he does not have his teleprompter, everything goes off course.
That's right.
And we saw this with Governor Sarah Palin when she ran for vice president. Her teleprompter went out, and here she was fine at the Republican National Convention. And, people go after her when she speaks off the cuff. And it's the same thing when Dr. Ben Carson said the same thing on this program a while back. When you believe in something, what do you need the notes for? I mean,
That's right.
You're speaking, you're not reading. Ted Cruz has had a great relationship with Governor Palin, and I think the similarities are remarkable. And after talking to both of Palin's parents several times, you can see she certainly gets a lot of her values and strength from them. Same deal with you and Senator Cruz, it seems.
I'll tell you what, I love Governor Palin. She is such a wonderful woman of God, a person that has a deep faith and conviction. I just was so delighted when she came, and her endorsement of my son in the late stages of the campaign was a pivotal point in the campaign. And, I mean, we only had 24 hours notice, and there were thousands of people at the rally just to come hear her. She is such an inspiration. And she is someone, again, that speaks from the heart. She truly believes what she says. And I am just so excited. She has been such a powerful force in this country. And we saw it in the last elections. I mean, almost every candidate that she backed won.
You got to meet with Governor Palin recently, and like everyone who gets to share some time with you, she just raved about it. How was it for you to see her again?
We helped organize a fundraiser for her here in Dallas, and my son had to be in Washington. He couldn't be here, so I went over there and had the opportunity to speak on her behalf for a few minutes. And she's such a wonderful person. It's such a privilege to be able to do that. And I certainly know that she will continue to be a dynamic force in this country, in whatever position she's at.
You touched on this a little bit earlier. What can you tell people who don't appreciate how exceptional this country is? You came here in a unique way, and I think you can appreciate what America is about and perhaps educate those who take our nation for granted.
Well, unfortunately, Kevin, what has happened is the progressives have even rewritten our history books. I mean, people don't really know about the history of this country. Like, for example, the fact that when the Pilgrims arrived in America, they actually started a communist experiment the first year that they were here, and it was a total failure. And as a matter of fact, about half of them starved to death. But they were smart enough and flexible enough that they came to Governor Bradford and they said, look, this doesn't work. Because they were all working together to try to share in what the land produced, and it was a total failure. And so Governor Bradford said, all right, each of you take your own plot of land, you work your land, you feed your family. So the free enterprise system was born in America in 1622, and that socialist experiment was a total failure. Now, why should we try again 4 centuries later something that didn't work at all in 1620? It's crazy.
Well, we also know that you, sir, coming from Cuba, you embody the American dream, and I think that's why you and your son fight so hard for our country, because if we lose it, what are our options?
I used to tell my son so many times when he was 8 and 9, I would say, Ted, when I lost my freedom in Cuba, I had a place to come to. If we lose our freedoms here, where are we going to go? And Kevin, there is no place to go. This is it. So we have to draw a line in the sand and fight to preserve it.
You mentioned speaking at that event with Governor Palin. You've been in demand by some conservative and Tea Party groups. Are you enjoying speaking and spreading a hopeful message?
Oh, yes. Last year I spent the whole year campaigning for Ted all over the state of Texas, but now I'm traveling all over the country. Early this year, actually, in my quiet time with the Lord, basically, what I felt the Lord was telling me was to wake up the pastors. Ezekiel 3:17 says, Son of man, I called you as a watchman on the wall. Basically to do 2 things. To hear from me, in other words, to hear from God, and number 2, to warn the people. And basically what I felt the Lord was telling me is go tell the pastors to wake up and warn the people. And I'll tell you what, since then, without my moving a finger, the Lord has been opening up pastors' conferences. I'm doing pastors' conferences every month without my organizing any of them. I already have one scheduled in January, have another one scheduled in March, and they're occurring independent of my moving a finger. So I know it's God that is orchestrating this thing, and I had one in Denver with over 300. I just had one in the near Houston with about 150 this last month. And, we need to wake up the pastors that they stop hiding behind the pulpit and address the challenges that this country has.
Well, Pastor Cruz, you are obviously a great father. You're certainly a great American, and we thank you for being here and for all you do. And we wish you, your entire family, a very Merry Christmas and a blessed New Year. Well,
thank you, Kevin. The same to you. And please give my love to Governor Palin and the whole family. We love them very much, and we hold them in very high regard. They're true patriots, and I know that they're people that truly love the Lord and want to serve God.
Pastor Rafael Cruz, you can see where Ted Cruz gets it. What a pleasure having Pastor Cruz here on the program. Phil Robertson of Duck Dynasty was suspended by A&E this past week for simply expressing his Christian beliefs in a magazine interview. Sarah Palin took to social media to blast those, condemning Phil. Palin wrote, quote, "Free speech is an endangered species. Those intolerants, hatin', and taking on the Duck Dynasty patriarch for voicing his personal opinion are taking on all of us," unquote. Palin also offered a Christmas call to action, saying, here's the choice. Will we succumb to politically correct thought police and let the intolerance stifle freedom, or will we be just a little bit brave and take a stand to protect the heart of America, which beats with freedom? The latter will make you happy, happy, happy. This Duck Dynasty controversy is another reminder of the chilling effect we see with the right to express a faith-filled opinion that some may disagree with. It's the issue addressed in Good Tidings and Great Joy. Palin also went on the Hannity program to discuss the Duck Dynasty flap. You can access that video at saranet.net. Check it out to hear the governor's full thoughts on Phil and the quacks over at A&E. To see any of the governor's posts in their entirety, visit Sarah Palin's Facebook page and follow her on Twitter at Sarah Palin USA.
It's time for Commonwealth Common Sense with Susan Stimson and Kevin Scholla.
Hello, Susan. Welcome back.
Hey, Kevin. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you. And here we go, the Christmas season wrapping up here. We're heading toward the big day, unbelievably. It went, kind kind of on time, I think, in a way, but in other ways fast. And, you know, you always get so excited for it, and at least I know I do, and I know you do. But apparently some people want to put a stop to even saying the word.
I think so. I think in America we're just getting so dangerously loose with everything having to be so politically correct. There was a poll that came out recently that half of Americans have detached any religious ties to the meaning of Christmas. But my greater concern is what I'm seeing in America on so many different things and so many different levels as far as political correctness, that is what a certain segment of people think is politically correct, and the warning not to say Merry Christmas.
Yeah, and it's so awkward, too, because it's not only, you know, as Sarah Palin has said, the atheists armed with attorneys or those who actually have an agenda, but a lot of times it is people who do celebrate Christmas, but they've just been so beaten down that this is the thing to do that they're walking around with this happy holidays or whatever else. You get all these cards in the mail telling you about it's the season about laughter and it's the season about, you know, all these different words, but never do you mention Christmas or the guy who you're celebrating.
Well, we talked about this at Thanksgiving, the Thanksgiving proclamation that George Washington gave to our nation, and I kind of said tongue-in-cheek that today he would be labeled as extreme. But Ravi Zacharias is a theologian who I do enjoy reading, and I do admire him. And one of the points that he made, he's a Hindu, he's from India, and he now lives here in the United States. He said that you talk about, you know, the Judeo-Christian values on which our nation was founded, and you cannot ignore what, you know, is in the founding document. All men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. So I just think that there should be more of us who are very willing to just wish people a Merry Christmas.
And meantime, we see what happens with Phil Robertson here on Duck Dynasty, who just answers a question honestly, his opinion, his religious beliefs, to a magazine, not even on the show that he's on. And here he gets suspended from his show by A&E. Meantime, people chuckle at Miley Cyrus. You know, Martin Bashir, he had to leave on his own after the vile things he said about Sarah Palin. But this guy's talking about his Christian beliefs, and they suspend the man.
Well, I was doing some Christmas shopping at a very well-known store that everyone goes to, and there was an album it was a CD by Lady Gaga. And the front of that album, of what she has chosen to do, she's basically nude, and she is in a very just awkward, lewd position. Those type of things are fine, but when you express your freedom of speech, even if you don't like what someone says, even if they say it in a tone and a manner and a way that you don't agree, we all have to agree that there is right to have a freedom of speech here in America. And I did find it very interesting that the very group that wants there to be tolerance was very intolerant of anyone expressing a difference of opinion. I do think that we should be expressing our differences in love, and so I don't think that I would have adopted that type of tone. But if you don't like someone's tone, then I would just say don't listen to them, don't watch whatever program they may be on, and move on. But once we start censoring what people are allowed to say are their beliefs, I think that we're just going to have some real problems.
Right, and that's the common sense approach. I've always thought that, too. I've never called for anyone's job for any of these reasons. If you don't want to listen to or watch someone, you simply don't do it. But this is what we see, from Imus to what they tried to do with Rush Limbaugh, with what they did here with Phil Robertson. They have to try to take your job from you, take your livelihood. It's really unbelievable. You know, I'm paraphrasing here, but I remember President Reagan said something along the lines when you talk about Christmas about how, you know, and this was back in the 80s, and this is when this all probably really started at the fever pitch, and now has come to this point where, you know, people, you can't even say Secret Santa. I know one school by us is having a secret snowman giveaway with the kids. You know, why even do it if you're going to do that? But I remember Reagan said something along the lines of, you know, you can have trees in the room, you can have pictures of snowflakes, but I wonder what the teacher says if someone raises their hand and says, hey, why is it called Christmas?
Interesting. Well, I just think that as we start moving into this more and more in detail through all kinds of different holidays and different beliefs, I think that Americans are going to have to make a decision that protection of our First Amendment right to express our opinion and have freedom of speech is pretty important. And I think that we need to just push back on overreaches like this and just certainly celebrate a wonderful and joyous season.
It's funny, too, how those who don't want to say the word Christmas celebrate, quote-unquote, Christmas, when, that just by definition can't be the case. I compare it to when vegetarians who are vegetarians for animal reasons then get food that looks like a hot dog or looks like chicken nuggets. I never understood that. Like, why do you want it to look like an animal if you're against animal? It's the same kind of just awkward mindset and, lack of common sense or thought.
I think that it's interesting for some people that want to kind of avoid the word Christmas, they'll say happy holidays, but the very definition of a holiday is a holy day. It's a set-apart day. Mm-hmm. So no matter how hard we try, in my opinion, I don't think that there's going to be any way that we can be separated from, what is true. And so I just encourage everyone to say Merry Christmas. Absolutely,
Susan Stimson. It is not Arbor Day. It's not Grandparents' Day. It's not Halloween. It is Christmas time, and Merry Christmas to you and your family, and thanks for all you do. This whole year has been wonderful with you here on the Palin Update, and we look forward to more fun starting in January.
Kevin, thank you, and you have a great and Merry Christmas as well.
Susan Stimson in Virginia. More Commonwealth Common Sense next week. Now, our weekly commentary, Steel Resolve. Here's Sarah Steelman.
Thanks, Kevin. What a strange and bizarre world we live in today. We start the week with Obama's whiz kids rolling out Pajama Boy in a desperate attempt to market Obamacare. And we end the week with Duck Dynasty's Phil Robertson's comments about homosexuality in GQ. It reminds me of the huge cultural divide that exists in this country. The cultural warriors who demand more and more political correctness and sensitivity gave birth to Pajama Boy, a weak, passionless, coddled little man tied to his parents' apron strings, drinking a cup of hot chocolate. Rural Louisiana gave us Duck Dynasty Dude, who pulled himself up by his bootstraps, is passionate, has strong beliefs, and isn't afraid to state them publicly. Pajama Boy represents Obama's nanny state, and Duck Dynasty Dude represents rugged individualism and self-sufficiency. The question today is, do more people identify with Pajama Boy or Duck Dynasty Dude? I don't know the answer. In fact, I worry about the answer. Our country was built and defended with men like the Duck Dynasty Dude. Take a minute to look at their two images side by side. One can agree or disagree with Duck Dynasty Dude, but if you had to choose which one to be with in a foxhole, whom would you choose? Personally, I'd go with Duck Dynasty over Pajama Boy. This is Sarah Steelman for SarahNet Radio.
Tune in again next week for another segment of Steel Resolve right here on the Palin Update. The Palin Update, including Commonwealth Common Sense and Steel Resolve, is on demand and available for download. So just head to SarahNetRadio.net, pick the show you want to hear, and you can listen anywhere, anytime. Well, that'll just about do it for this edition of the Palin Update on SarahNet Radio. Visit SarahNetRadio.net for continuing coverage of Governor Palin. Also, follow along on Twitter at SarahNet Radio, at Kevin Scholla, at Susan B. Stimson, and at Sarah_Steelman. For a full recap of everything you hear on the Palin Update, plus more news regarding Governor Palin, head to our Facebook page and like SarahNet Radio. Also like Kevin Scholla on Facebook. Palin Patriots is our feature on SarahNet.net. Check out the writings from our great panel of contributors, including Martha Zoller and Bader Carmoot. And I'm doing some writing for Breitbart News. Just go to Breitbart.com and search Kevin Scholla. I want to thank Sarah Steelman, Susan Stimson, and everyone here at SarahNet Radio. Thanks to Pastor Rafael Cruz. And thank you for listening today. Please be sure to join us again next time for another edition of the Palin Update. I'm Kevin Scholla. Have a pleasant day, and Merry Christmas.